Hello, everybody. My name's Cthulhu. Um, I'm not going to be having any fun little music today. I'm not going to have any colored lights because this article is not really that kind of article, if you couldn't tell by the content warning below me. This is a very heavy article. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This is a hard read, a very difficult read. And I don't want anyone to come in here expecting more of the fun, kind of goofy horror of some of these articles and being totally blindsided. So I'm just going to say that right now. This article is about slavery. This article is about scientific racism and how it affects even organizations with the best of intentions, like the Foundation, how its roots are still present in modern processes. The article and some of the other things I'm going to be reading today contain terms that are heavily outdated, are actively offensive, nothing quite, hard R anything, but I'm going to be saying the word Negro several times today, but from this point forward, after that, I will only be quoting it directly. I'm not going to be using it to describe anything. I will be using it as it is used in these articles, along with any other questionable terms. I will explain what they mean if they are not well known. I will not say them more than absolutely necessary. I'm going to do everything I can to make this as tolerable as possible, despite how objectionable the subject matter is, because I think this is an important article. I think this is one of the best articles on the website. And that's not an exaggeration. I think this is a masterpiece, but I also think it needs to be handled with care. So tread lightly if you're sensitive to any of these things. If you're not feeling like you can take that today, turn the stream off. I will not judge you. I will not begrudge anybody that. This is a hard article to tolerate. It is difficult. But I think if you have the stomach for it, and if you're willing to delve in, you're going to appreciate the nuances of it. I'm going to start this off by explaining two very important things. The first is, what is an EX article? So you might have noticed the title of this article has an EX at the front. 1851-EX. The EX stands for explained. And as they describe it on the Explained SCP's hub, an EX, which stands for Explained SCP, is one which we have figured out. It is an SCP that is no longer an SCP, either because it has become commonplace, we worked out the physics behind it, or it has otherwise become a complete non-anomaly. So this can take several forms. There is even an SCP-001 proposal, which is an explained article because it eventually stops being anomalous. But you also have some key examples. This is the first one I ever read, 067-EX. It is an inn, the Rurik Inn, located in Maine. It has 16 rooms. The entirety of the inside is covered with 11,000 species of fungi. They are able to move and grow instantaneously and often tend to do so with each other. Toxic molds. Multiple species of animals have been noted to inhabit it. Animals bear tumorous growths. They express feelings of unease and anxiety. And eventually, recent soil analysis has found all these weird substances. Events occurring not only to be inconsistent with video, but with each other. Addendum 067C. Following soil analysis, it has come to our attention that the organic materials inside and around the anomaly are emitting baseline radiation levels of 1 MSV per hour. This is good news. in that we can now better understand 067, but bad news when you account for Emily Orion and I soaking up an average of 24 MSV, or roughly 10 years worth of background radiation exposure, over the course of a single day-long excursion. And then the final addendum. As of 2004, it is considered to be an explained phenomenon. The decision was made after two separate and crucial discoveries. One, the discovery of a previously unknown fungus dubbed Orion's Cup. This fungus was noted to produce a chemical compound that interferes with neurotransmitters, resulting in mild hallucinations and a feeling of euphoria. CT4 is also responsible for partial loss of motor control. This accounts for the bizarre behavior observable within a majority of the animals in the inn, who are most likely drawn to the fungi due to it being a rich food source. It was also concluded that the presence of the fungus itself could potentially be explained by the presence of numerous decaying organics underground and/or high levels of radiation. Such scenarios are uncommon, but wholly within the realm of understanding. Excavation of the area was approved. This prompted the discovery of several kilograms of uranium ore, as well as 29 human corpses. Various other materials found. It is believed that decaying bodies attracted animals. The individuals responsible have not been identified. It is possible this group is still alive and are attempting to construct a nuclear reactor. Their location and motives are unclear. So, essentially, what that article is, it's something that was thought to be anomalous at first, because the SCP Foundation is going to look at something, and, like that, with all these weird, unexplainable things, and immediately alarm bells are going to go off. But eventually determined to be within normal science. Unlikely, but still entirely possible. So it's explained. It's no longer considered anomalous. Similarly, this is 1337-EX, made by a group of interest called Vikander Need Technical Media, who I don't believe we've discussed before. Basically, they make anomalous videos, shows, radio broadcasts, anything like that. In this case, they make NFTs. They sell them under the label of VKTM NFTs, purported to give the user ownership of great moments in history, all these things. Eventually, of course, they discover there's no memetic properties to any of it. People literally just want to own NFTs. It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, making a point about how NFTs are dumb, but you get the idea. They think there's something anomalous causing people to want these things. There isn't. People are just silly. As far as this article is concerned, the explained aspect of it has to do with pseudoscience. Has to do with people devising diagnoses and anomalies to suit their political ideology and to suit what they're trying to accomplish. In this case, being the subjugation of an entire race of people. The other thing I need to explain is, you may have noticed the title of this article is 1851-EX. The subtitle is Drapetomania. This is a outdated term for a medical diagnosis which no longer exists because it was never real to begin with. It was created by this man, Samuel A. Cartwright, who is a physician, practiced in Mississippi and Louisiana, outspoken opponent of germ theory, not surprising, best known as the inventor of the mental illness of drapetomania, the desire of a slave for freedom. He presented his findings. If they, quote, if they nonetheless become dissatisfied with their condition, they should be whipped to prevent them from running away. He relied on passages of Christian scripture dealing with slavery. Furthermore, he described the condition of genu fluxit, in which slaves exacted awe and reverence towards their master. The condition could be lost, though, if masters were to treat their slaves overly harshly and deny basic privileges. Rather than just arguing to treat slaves negatively overall, he desired to treat slaves somewhere in the middle, similarly to how one would treat a child. And in fact, this is from a book which I don't like. I read another passage of it that basically described how mental illness isn't real. Not a good book. Health, Disease, and Illness, Concepts in Medicine by Arthur L. Kaplan. It was from, I forget what book, what university, Georgetown University Press from 2004. Is Alzheimer's really a disease? What is menopause, a biological or a social construction? It's, not a great book, but it has the entirety of Samuel Cartwright's article, report on, what is it? report on the diseases and physical peculiarities of the Negro race. So, the Drapetomania, or the disease causing slaves to run away. It is unknown to our medical authorities, although its diagnostic symptom, the absconding from service, is well known to our planters and overseers as it was to the ancient Greeks. I have added to the word meaning runaway slave another Greek term to express the disease of the mind causing him to abscond. In noticing a disease not heretofore classed upon among the long list of maladies that man is subject to, it was necessary to have a new term to express it. The cause, in the most of cases, that induces the Negro to run away from service is as much a disease of the mind as any other species of mental alienation, and much more curable as a general rule. With the advantages of proper medical advice strictly followed, this troublesome practice that many Negroes have of running away can be almost entirely prevented, although the slaves be located on the borders of a free state within a stone's throw of the abolitionists. I long ago observed that some good persons, considered as very good and others as very bad masters, often lost their Negroes by their absconding from service, while the slaves of another class of persons, remarkable for order and good discipline, but not praised or blamed as either good or bad masters, never ran away, although no guard or forcible means were used to prevent them. The same management which prevented them from walking over a mere nominal unguarded line will prevent them from running away anywhere. So, essentially, and here's the genuflexit as described in the Wikipedia article. Essentially, Cartwright and other slave owners of the time were trying to find a way to justify the subjugation of black people as slaves, and eventually decided, well, if we find a medical excuse, if we find a quote-unquote scientific reason that black people should be enslaved, we can justify it. And Cartwright also using scripture to justify it, stating how, well, we're benevolent. We're doing the right thing. They, if they were off free, they would be much worse off, which is obviously reprehensible, disgusting. And the fact that they used medical language, they shrouded their agenda of subjugating other humans, living humans, in a veil of scientificness, officiality. Medical language made it seem less reprehensible to people at the time and allowed them to justify their attempts to prevent their slaves from escaping. All of that said, let's get to the actual article at hand. SCP-1851-EX. The following has been classified Code Red Inaccessible by the Records and Information Security Administration. Access is restricted to Level 5 personnel only. This document was nullified by Overwatch Directive 001 when this organization, the American Secure Containment Initiative, merged with several others to form the Modern Foundation on the 1st of January 1916. This record is retained for archival purposes only. Item number 1851-023. Classification type, threatening. ASCI protocols for containment. Negroes affected by this phenomenon are to be treated by as many of the following procedures as is deemed necessary by the owner or lessee. 1. That corporal punishment in the form of whipping be applied up to 100 per day, 75 for wenches, 50 at most for, I will not be saying this word, because it's a very outdated term, as a racial slur for African American children and pejorative term for Aboriginal children of the Americas, Australia, and New Zealand. I will not be saying this one out loud. 2. That affected workers be instructed through biblical teachings in the appropriate deference to be shown to divinely ordained masters. 3. That the large toes of each foot be removed. Incurable servants are to be recruited into the program for incorrigibles, as detailed in this report. We will get to that later. Description. Phenomenon 1851-023 is a disorder of the mind exclusive to the Negro race, and most particularly to those segments of the Negro race appropriately employed in servile labor under the tutelage of a white master. Whilst it goes without saying that Negroes released from this form of service are far more susceptible to mental insanity and weakness, this form of madness is strictly confined to the servant populations. So even when they're not even discussing that, they are still reinforcing, oh, well, if we release slaves, they'll go crazy, they'll be weak. They are, actively trying to reinforce this agenda that they are superior, that black people are less than. The primary symptom of the phenomenon is the desire on the part of affected servants to quit their divinely assigned duties and lands, migrating to territories sympathetic to their situation. Of late, it has been recorded that a number of Negro servants, this of course changes nothing of the general attitude of Negroes under our employ, who assure us that they feel, as we have taught them, their futures would be best spent under our benevolent supervision. Have become difficult to contain in their places. This has been noted both within those properties controlled by the Containment Initiative and throughout those areas inhabited by the owners of such servants. Initiative senior researcher S. Samuel Cartwright, has demonstrated in his laboratory the existence of a phenomenon called by himself Drapetomania, but to be known henceforth as phenomenon 1851-023 in Initiative documentation. So within the context of this article, Samuel Cartwright is a member of the American Secure Containment Initiative, this predecessor to the Foundation. He is essentially a Foundation researcher who just so happens to be, or maybe doesn't just so happen to be, deeply racist and wants to keep his slaves. The cause of this malady is incompletely understood. As is presently known, there is no discernible form of miasma. The burgeoning theory that disease transmission requires the presence and proliferation of microscopic creatures of some kind is currently under review by the initiative. Its applicability to this case, if true, could be revolutionary to our research. Again, calling back to the fact that Cartwright opposed germ theory, potentially responsible for the disorder. A correlation has been found, however, between the presentation of this form of disobedience and a particular relationship between master and servant. More specifically, those occasions when masters begin to treat servants as though they are of the white race, begin to treat them as equals, are the occasions that seem most likely to lead to this phenomenon. It cannot be emphasized too greatly that Negroes kept in captivity must be reminded of their inferior status with a regular frequency, and must not be allowed to think too highly of themselves. Particulars to avoid include allowing servants to achieve literacy or numeracy, giving servants the ability to choose their own mates, thus disturbing the thorough planning of masters to maintain stronger bloodlines, and the free practice of Negro Christianity, which tends to undermine the lessons of dependence taught to the Negro by white churches. So, unlike Foundation articles, which are politically neutral for the most part, this article actively is encouraging the subjugation of black people, and in fact instructing slave owners on how best to avoid runaway slaves. This report, compiled July 17, 1851, in accordance with American Secure Containment Initiative protocols. Nota bene, essentially Latin for pay attention, important, attention. The prevalence of phenomenon 1851-023 among the working and breeding stock, what it is, describing living humans as breeding stock, it just makes me sick, owned by many of the initiative's directors, along with a general sense of civic duty, have prevailed upon the initiative to take action. Henceforth, initiative men are to encourage patrollers and police to remand captured Negro escapees into their custody. Dr. Cartwright has put together a particular cohort of unruly servants, otherwise suited for conventional Negro labor, which he is referring to informally as the Drapetomaniac class. These are to be put through the most rigorous of duties for the initiative, those for which loyal servants would be wasted through attrition. Director Wilson noted March 31st, 1857. Now, if this is starting to ring some alarm bells for you, it should. You've probably heard D-class described in several SCP articles, and you probably are already deeply uncomfortable with what this is inferring. Given the recent political developments, particularly the recent initiation of civil war and its implications for the likely future of Negro servitude, alternate plans are being comprised for the future of the Drapetomaniac class, upon which our research has become rather dependent. So within 5 years, research becomes entirely dependent upon runaway slaves being used as lab rats. Our fears have come to fruition with the recent proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation, of course, being passed in 1863. Henceforth, given our official support for the Northern Union, our policy is to be as follows. Recruitment for D-Class, there it is to now take place among prisons, asylums for madmen and madwomen, the chronically indigent, poor, and unable to hold a job, almshouses, housing for the poor, and those arrested for vagrancy. This policy, which we are calling the Cartwright Protocol, has the advantage of maintaining a remarkably similar makeup for our D-Class while supporting the current regime in the federal city. A remarkably similar makeup. You know why? You want to know what population is, statistically much more likely to end up in prison through no fault of their own? Yeah, you guessed it. It's black people. So they are saying, well, if we just switch up how we're selecting people, but still end up selecting the same race, then we're just fine. We can go on without any issue. And this is 1914, much later. Criticism for our current policies re D-Class recruitment has come from several of our overseas counterparts. Given current policy among the board of directors and the mutual attempt at an alliance or merger with organizations with similar aims, the initiative is to restrict its D-Class recruitment solely to prisons and, in the event of extreme need, orphanages. In practice, of course, this will change little of the racial makeup of that group. Again, reinforcing the point that they know damn well about racist practices of arresting black people, statistically far more than white people, and they're, in fact, using it to their advantage. Additionally, those of the D-Class are to be disposed of in secret, and are to be disposed of the monthly termination of early SCP articles. There is an idea that D-Class were terminated at the end of every month and replaced. This has sort of fallen out of favor in recent articles. One, because it's, inhumane, and two, because it just doesn't make logistical sense. There's not enough death row inmates in the world to replace that many. And their numbers are no longer recorded except for the Directorate's information. Director Morris noted March 17, 1914. Excuse me. Addendum 1851-5. This anomaly declassified and removed 1st of January 1916. Head researcher Cartwright has proposed all documentation regarding 1851 be located and destroyed. Tell Cartwright he can go to hell. We'll remove it, but we're keeping a record of what we've done. His family did this, and we helped him. We're not whitewashing the record for him. I don't know how we'll ever make up for what we've done here, but the least we can do is remember. 05-9. So this Cartwright is descended from Samuel Cartwright, stayed within the Foundation, and tried to whitewash the record. He tried to remove any trace of this horrific, unconscionable thing that his family did. And the SCP Foundation is saying, no. No, you don't just get a get out of jail free card. That's not how this works. I think this article is brilliant for making a commentary on the earlier practices of SCP articles, of how D-Class is already just an inhumane thing, taking prisoners from death row, making commentary on how modern prisons are really not that different from slavery, making commentary on how scientific racism was used, and is still used, to promote ideas such as slavery, or indentured servitude, or Jim Crow, or anything similar. It's brilliant. And the fact that this article was written relatively early in the life of the Foundation, of the website. It was written in 2011. This article is 13 years old, or just over 12 years old at this point. And it still holds up. It feels like it could be written today, and it would still hold up. It also does not really get discussed very much, which I think is a tragedy. I understand why, because it is a complicated article, an article that needs to be handled with the utmost care, but one that I think takes the explained format, which is mostly used for, not things like this. Mostly used for, oh, here's a weird thing, but we figured it out. And instead uses it to make a point. I think it's brilliant. I don't have much else to say about this article, but I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best on the wiki to this day. And that's about all I have to say. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, thank you for sticking with me. Yeah. That's about all I got for today. Because I don't want to have to talk about too many of these things more than necessary, but given the subject matter of the article, I think it's important to have a discussion about the actual history of this topic. So yeah, thank you for watching. I will try to have my stream schedule posted at some point soon. I don't have my links in the description for this one. It doesn't feel right. You can click on one of my other videos and find all the links. I got a Discord, I got an Instagram, yada yada. Yeah.